Mario, good evening.
Good evening. So I guess we can now start. Giselle and Gladys. Would you like me to start now, Gladys?
Hold on. Well, the first one to speak.
Okay, we can start now. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Mario Santo Domingo, and I'm the president of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. I am a research scientist at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And I'd like to welcome everyone, especially our distinguished guests, our PAASE colleagues and friends who are joining us this morning in this auspicious occasion. We are happy to be able to hold this event today because in the next few days, our esteemed Secretary-Designate Alfredo Pascual of the Department of Trade and Industry and equally esteemed Secretary-Designate of the National Economic and Development Authority, Dr. Arsenio Balisacan, will be assuming office and would be extremely preoccupied with affairs of the state. So I'd like to thank first PAASE immediate past president, Gisela Concepcion, for conceptualizing this idea of a congratulatory testimonial for them. Today, we will, of course, wish them well as they start performing their vital duties to the Republic and listen to their initial, if not their major trusts in the government portfolios that they will be running. I will also briefly present for them and for everyone a brief overview of the 10-point PAASE recommendations for Philippine science, technology, and innovation from the roundtable discussions that we held a few months back. We also have assembled this morning a host of veritable current and former PAASE leaders to be introduced later on by PAASE Vice President Gladys Completo. We'll each briefly congratulate our Secretary-Designate.
Just click it,
Okay.
And articulate in their own words their aspirations for a better SCI ecosystem in the country. So thank you po sa inyong lahat. Magandang umaga muli at narito ang ating moderators, Gladys, VP Gladys, and immediate past President Gisela Concepcion.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Giselle. Okay, to give the introduction to our Secretary-Designate Alfredo Pascual, I'd like to call on Dr. Gisela Concepcion.
Thank you, Vice President Gladys, and greetings to all our PAASE colleagues and to our honorees. I'd like to start by introducing with great honor and pleasure our first Secretary-Designate of the Department of Trade and Industry, President Alfredo Pascual, 20th President of the University of the Philippines, and well, until today or a few weeks ago, President of the Management Association of the Philippines. Many of us know a lot of things about him, but it might interest you to know that he is a chemistry graduate of UP. And then he did a master's in business administration also in UP. And then he's a member of the Upsilon Sigma Phi, but also that he was valedictorian of University of Santo Tomas High School. He taught at UP as a chemistry instructor and then as a professor of management engineering at the Ateneo de Manila, and then professor of financial management at the Asian Institute of Management, where he held the, I think it's the American Express professorial chair. He also worked in Procter & Gamble as a department manager, project manager of Bancom Development Corporation, EVP of Philippine Pacific Capital Corporation and RCBC Capital. So he's been in industry, he's also been in the banking profession. Then he became an officer of the ADB, where as a senior investment officer, he was director for infrastructure finance and capital markets, and advisor on public-private partnerships in infrastructure with postings in New Delhi, India, and Jakarta, Indonesia. Well, many of us know his accomplishments as UP president from 2011 to 2017. And well, very importantly, he transformed UP to a research-intensive university and raised its global profile and strengthened its national development role as the Philippines' premier institution of learning. He has received many awards, including the Presidential Lingkod Bayan Award in 2014 from the Philippine President, and many, many other awards. So he was conferred an honorary Doctor of Pedagogy degree by Angeles University, and then an honorary Doctor of Sciences by the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Manila, and then also one from the Partido State University, and finally one from the University of the Philippines, honoris causa. So ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to give the virtual floor to our first honoree, Secretary-Designate Pascual. Now stop sharing.
Thank you, Giselle. And good morning to colleagues in PAASE. I'm very much gratified to be present here and participate in this session. Let me just share with you some thoughts. It's not yet well organized because I'm still trying to fully comprehend the range of activities that I will have to deal with as Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry. Anyway, just as we see the threat of the pandemic waning, we see even darker clouds ahead. I put my faith in our experience and past accomplishments to be able to help our government navigate through these new challenges facing us as a people, as a country. What are these new challenges and how one might or I might respond to them out of DTI? Well, number one challenge is food security. There are three aspects of food security that we need to contend with, and DTI is specifically mandated to address some of these aspects. Availability This will have to be coordinated with the producers of food, but the manufacturing side will be taken care of by DTI. Accessibility, make sure that food gets where it is consumed and even out the prices across the country, and avoiding pockets of undersupply in the face of high demand. Affordability, to ensure that the consumer can bring home what is available in the market. DTI has the responsibility of stabilizing or watching the prices of some basic commodities through the institution of suggested retail prices, and also watching out for hoarding and cartelization of markets. Now, to support food production post-harvest, we're looking at possible investments in cold chain logistics, grain storage, e-market logistics, using digital technology to provide us the NEDA data, indoor farms or vertical farms, alternative protein sources, such as plant-based meat alternatives. We shall also support local industries that directly impact food security. Another big challenge is energy security. We shall concern ourselves with three aspects of this challenge: reduction of import dependence, meaning energy import dependence, pursuit of the development of new sources of or new projects involving renewable energy production, rural electrification using renewable energy. A type of energy source that has not yet been tried in the country is, of course, nuclear energy. And we're looking at seriously, I mean, as a new government, the possibility of employing this clean energy, but psychologically resisted by a number of constituents in the country. But there are new technologies in nuclear, particularly the modular plants and the even smaller plants that are used in the submarines, nuclear submarines that can be used in many of the isolated island economies in the country. There are also some related projects related to energy, like the development of electric vehicles manufacturing, renewable energy equipment and the components manufacturing, like solar cells, batteries and battery energy systems. You know, we're among the largest producers of nickel and cobalt, and as well as copper, which are important components that go into energy production, storage, and distribution. We hope to be able to work on further processing of the ores that we currently export as is without further processing. Of course, we need to deploy charging stations. Power and auto electronics manufacturing will be supportive of this, and development of microgrids. It will not be all a DTI responsibility, but we will contribute ideas and support with other departments in the government that are directly in charge of energy. Of course, in the social sector, there are challenges that we know very well. Education, we need to keep up with the rise of more skilled, more educated workers in our neighboring countries. because without skilled workers, we cannot attract foreign direct investment here. And we need to catch up. There are a number of proposals in this regard. I think there will be a review of the whole education system. There's a law or bill being considered in Congress to be able to carry out this review and address again and once and for all how to address the challenges we're facing in education. My thought here is that our educational system, particularly post-secondary or even secondary, should be geared towards, quite apart from the what's called the educational aspect of going to school. We need to be able to produce skilled manpower, job-ready workforce that can support the growth of our industries. Shelter is still a social development issue, and now post-pandemic, we all realize the critical importance of a working and integrated health system. That's another area for which we, the DTI, will provide some inputs. With respect to health, for example, we will have to entice investors to go into world-class region-based hospitals. Vaccine manufacturing is one area that has to be considered seriously. I think there's work already going on here on the side of DOH. Health information management services. Okay, this is an offshoot of the crisis. Partnership with globally ranked learning institutions to further improve our post-secondary education system. For industry development, we shall double down on skills training to match industry's current and future needs to catch up with the lost pandemic years. I would like to also focus on regional development, an idea that we've been promoting since the time I was in UP. This really goes hand in hand with food security and energy security, and naturally promotes the participation of MSMEs. I'll talk about MSMEs later. The target investments for the region shall be, of course, this is already happening. The IT BPM sector is spreading out across the country. That's no longer concentrated in NCR. We need to improve the production of coconut, and there is now the Cocoa Levy Fund that will hopefully take care of this. Cacao and coffee production has also to be looked into, and the post-harvest processing of these crops. Surprisingly, we're already growing coffee here, but we still import 80% of our local coffee consumption. Aquaculture also requires attention. Production and processing of bamboo. On the transportation side, we have inter-island logistics that we need to pay attention to bring down the cost of moving goods across the country. It's always said that it's more expensive to ship goods from Mindanao to Manila or Manila to Mindanao than from Singapore to Manila. Well, one way we can develop local industries in the regions is to continue and further reinforce the One Town, One Product and shared service facility program that has already been started, where we indirectly invest in technology upgrading of our MSMEs. We shall also bridge SUCs, state universities and colleges, and local entrepreneurs to improve the global competitiveness through technology and innovation for our promising clusters of industry MSMEs. These are just some of the things that come to mind at this point, and I'll be happy to hear the suggestions of our colleagues that we might be able to incorporate in finalizing our development program in DTI as well as in the country as a whole. Anyway, Secretary RC is here to take care of the broader scope of the planning for the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary-Designate Pascual. Let's recall a paper that we wrote in PAASE. This is our position paper and S&T human recommendations for S&T human capital development. And some of the points you raised today are mentioned in that paper. And at this point, I'd like to recognize the presence of someone who's inextricably linked with our two Secretary-Designate honorees. This is former Secretary Ernie Pernia, who is joining us from New York. Good evening, Sec Ernie. Ernie. Anyway, at this point, I'd like to move on to our next honoree. And I have the honor and pleasure to introduce Secretary-Designate Arsenio R.C. Balisacan. And this is from the website of the UP School of Economics. And again, many of us know about Dr. Balisacan. There are some things that you might not know. So I think this is one of the more comprehensive write-ups profiles of Sec RC. So his research interests are agricultural and resource economics, development economics, applied welfare economics, and he has many publications with a very high H index. So he's currently chairperson of the Philippine Competition Commission. And then he was Socio-Economic Planning Secretary, NEDA Secretary from 2012 to 2016. He was Dean of the School of Economics of UP, Diliman from 2010 to 2012. Executive Director of the Philippine Center for Economic Development, 2010 to 2012. And then in 2008, he was elected to the National Academy of Science and Technology as academician. He's been professor of economics of the UP School of Economics, Diliman, in 1995. And this I remember very distinctly. He was director, chief executive of SHARCA, Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, is UP Los Baños, from 2000 to 2009. He also served as Undersecretary for Policy and Planning at the Department of Agriculture from 2000 to 2001 and then in 2003. So it's a long list. He's also economist at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. from 86 to 87. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to give the virtual floor to Secretary-Designate R.C.
Thank you, Gisela, for the very generous introduction. And good morning, good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to join you here and contribute to the discussion on policies, programs, strategies for the country moving forward. To organize my presentation a bit, given the time constraint, may I share with you a few slides? Okay, I hope you see that. This is a first attempt to put together already some of the initial discussions we've had with the incoming economic team of the incoming administration. And I encapsulated this into near term and medium term. Let me start first with some background here. Usually, the strategies and programs of administration are summarized in the what is referred to as Philippine Development Plan. During this current administration, that plan covers, and this is the time of my colleague here and Dr. Ernie Pernia, the PDP 2017 to 2022. So the next PDP is actually 2023 to 2028. But what I will be discussing here is the emerging elements of that PDP as currently discussed, and immediate or near-term plans and programs and strategies that we will immediately put in place to address contemporary and priority issues. So let me start with the goals for the incoming administration. Clearly, the immediate concern is the reinvigoration of jobs, job creation, and accelerate the post-recovery economic development, one that is inclusive or proper, resilient to climate change, and adaptable to the spread of automation and AI, or artificial intelligence. We need to get the economy recover quickly, putting it back to its high growth trajectory. And for the duration of the administration, we aim to achieve 6 to 8% from 2022 to 2028. Of course, the 2022 covers also the current administration. And with that kind of growth and with the attention to inclusivity, we should be able to reduce poverty from perhaps about 20 or 21, depending on the estimate. The estimate for 2021 still being worked out, to a single digit, like 9% by the end of the term. Okay. And this how this plan is emerging. The top of the screen is, you see this ambition natin 2040. This is a long-term vision of the Philippine economy, Philippine society, crafted in the previous administration. And then what gratified us was the fact that this present administration, through the initiative of Dr. Ernie here, adopted the ambition natin 2040 as also as the anchor for the Philippine Development Plan 2017 to 2022. And we intend to do the same thing to anchor this incoming PDP to this ambition natin 2040. Although I must say that given the current or the recent developments, the pandemic, the setbacks, and so on, you may have to visit that 2040 a little bit. The 2040 is a kind of a aspiration to join the developed country community. But as said, as the current developments or recent developments have shown us, you may have to revisit that a bit. So there may be a few years of slide, but I think the goals there are still very relevant. And one thing that we have to point out was that those goals, those aspirations, were very much evidence-based. They come from the various sectors of society, from the people who matter, from the poor to the very top. So it's not just an aspiration for the top and by the top leaders, but also even more as aspirations of ordinary people. All right, and as I said earlier, in the first year of the administration, we need to attend to pressing issues. And one of those pressing issues is obviously the need to recover quickly from the effects of the pandemic and face this looming crisis from food to energy to logistics and so on. And so as you can see here, we have such some critical strategic plans, though not detailed yet, but these are indicative agenda that we will need to put in place quickly. So my colleague Sec Fred has mentioned food security, energy security, and as well as logistics and transport. I would have, and he also mentioned about health, and but I think what we need to do to focus more attention now is the social protection. We need to strengthen that and ensuring that the crisis, the food and the energy price increases that we are seeing will not disproportionately adversely affect the poor and vulnerable. And so there's I'll talk more about that and what can be done to strengthen social protection if we have time. And then obviously in the face of all these challenges, we are also constrained by physical resources, as you know. The policy responses to the pandemic have resulted in sharp increases in deficits, in public debts, and paying those debts will have to be faced. And so as we are addressing these urgent concerns and providing more resources for the vulnerable groups, we have to also ensure that we manage our fiscal house properly so that we don't run into serious problems down the road, and thus will enable us to maintain, sustain recovery. So those near-term agendas would establish the more longer help set up kind of strengthen the post for the medium term. And here the focus for the medium term, the next 6 years, is on jobs. And here we need to pay attention not only in creating more jobs, but more importantly, the quality of those jobs and the resiliency associated with the jobs created. So there's a lot of attention. There will be a lot of attention that will go into improving efficiency so that the economy can transform itself so that into the more dynamic sectors of the economy, and such that the labor and other relatively abundant factors of production can go to areas where they can be more productive. So these issues and weaknesses of the supply chain and interlinkages across sectors will have to be addressed. The quality jobs will also mean that we'll pay more attention to manufacturing. This also Sec Fred mentioned earlier, because indeed there's a lot of evidence showing us that a robust manufacturing sector, this stage in our development, is a long-lasting valve for the reduction of poverty. And we feel that we haven't really missed the boat yet, that we can recapture the luster of manufacturing if we can get our acts together, coordinate our policies and programs so that we can address those issues that have hindered the growth of manufacturing. But let me quickly go over those elements. As you can see here, they are tentatively just 8-point agenda for each of the near term and medium term. But for brevity and for purposes of this presentation, let me just present them in a together. No? So, as I said, in the near term, the strategic interventions must address the pressing challenges, no? And these are the inflation, the vulnerability of our population resulting from price spikes, and addressing those scars created by the economic and social scars created by the pandemic. Because if we don't address those issues now, those will surely hamper us in our growth potentials moving forward. So, and in the medium term, as I said, the focus is on jobs, both quantity and quality. And so the first item here, and both the near term and medium term, is the issue of food security. And I would not belabor that. That has been mentioned by our secretaries, DTI, Sec Fred. But here, we will, the incoming administration, we must face squarely the root causes of the low productivity, stagnation of our food sector and the agricultural sector in general. And that, as you probably have heard the president, incoming president, saying, going back to the basics. And going back to the basics, it will include here really the focus should be raising productivity, and that would mean that you have to increase in investments in research and development. You have to take care of new varieties, new pest management practices, climate change adaptation, value addition, and so on. And we need to enhance the linkages among higher education institutions and the local industries, as stressed by Sec Fred also. All right, and the again, focusing on the near term, we need to prioritize on social services. We have made the point that and shared by most of the scientists here, I believe, that we can't have a economic recovery sustained on a long-term basis without addressing the inherent weaknesses of our health system. And we need to completely reopen our educational system. So we still have to ramp up vaccinations, resume the implementation of reforms in the Universal Healthcare Act, and so on. I think we can go into some of those details if we have time. I think this one is has been mentioned by Sec Fred, the employability and the quality of our workforce. There's much, I think, a lot of areas that can be improved upon there, particularly in ensuring that as we improve the quality of jobs, we need to ensure that the supply side, and that's the labor of the labor market, is also addressed. That you have a quality supply of labor. Okay, and here I think that where I would like to dwell a bit. We need to. The one thing that the current administration has done a good job is in pushing for very difficult reforms and achieving them, like the law and the Public Service Act that effectively liberalized foreign equity into various sectors of the economy that were previously constrained by constitutional or equity restrictions. And this can now be capitalized on by this new incoming administration. We have to put the implementing rules and regulations in place quickly so that the private sector can avail of this new environment. And with respect to the focus on the build projects, what we want to do is to obviously, for those that are already ongoing and nearly completed projects, they must be completed to ensure that the benefits expected from those projects are realized. Moving forward, we need to strengthen this build approach toward making those or strengthening the industry linkages, expanding the climate smart transport infrastructure, including digital connectivity. The point is that the lagging areas must be connected efficiently with leading areas by way of appropriate infrastructure facilities, including we would to transform regional economies, we need to include their water supply and sanitation, and affordable energy and flood protection infrastructure. All right. The other reorientation, I would say, is that, and partly in recognition of the tighter fiscal space, that we will encourage public-private partnerships in the incoming administration, but will particularly for solicited PPPs, no? And we'll have to prepare quickly a solid pipeline of projects for the medium term. So the message is that we would like the private sector to actively involve in the provision of our infrastructure requirements for sustained growth, but at the same time ensuring that PPPs meet the appropriate standards of sustainability, financial and economic, and other, as well as environmental and safety concerns. All right, but I think my own view is that the part of the very reason why we want PPPs to be strengthened is that we would want fiscal resources, very limited fiscal resources released and refocused toward rebuilding and building our social protection system, particularly our health and education, because otherwise you can't have very robust build projects with very equally robust spending for our social sector, given the very limited resources. Okay, that's where I would like to see the infrastructure reshape, and we also need to address the issue of lack of competition in various markets, particularly in the telecom and digital economy. So, for example, exclusivity dealings for internet services in many areas. Those would have to be stopped so that the quality and the prices of those services would be more affordable and accessible to the poor. Now, I said earlier, focused on quality jobs, green jobs. Here, what we mean is really adapting, leading the economy towards green and blue, by ensuring that that the economy, as it grows, it's able to withstand shocks coming from nature. And here, climate change adaptation and resiliency will be the focus. And given that the country is a minute, is a very small contributor to climate change, I think that focus is understandable. That does not mean that we will not pursue climate change mitigation strategies and policies, but we will do so only if these are proven to be cost efficient, and that doesn't come at the expense of our competitiveness and prices of goods and services for our people. So that's essentially energy cost that has already been mentioned by my colleague Fred. So let me go to the transport and logistics. I think they've heard that, and sound fiscal management. I think what I would want to say here also is that while government is so much constrained with revenues, sources of revenues, we are not. I don't think it is the right time to increase taxes at this point. We will identify various other efficient way of raising revenue without compromising the welfare of particularly the poor and vulnerable by way of price changes. But again, we will explore other modalities of addressing these issues, particularly in realigning expenditure. I would like to believe that that there is so much room for improving spending by government, and that you can achieve more with less. For example, I do think that that if you can push for digitalization faster, especially in government, like for example having the national ID immediately rolled out, and I think we can save use the technology in for example delivering safety nets for the poor and vulnerable, identifying the poor, and that way we can reduce substantially leakage and also reduce undercoverage. We do think that there was so much leakage arising from the ayuda system during the pandemic, partly because of that we did not have a system of targeting the poor and vulnerable at that time. I suppose that if the ID system was implemented faster and properly supported by other government agencies, perhaps that would have been useful in implementing the assistance program during the pandemic. But so we feel that this is one way of addressing this issue of reaching out and protecting the vulnerable. I think that's it for now. I sorry for taking this too long, but let me just say that this framework is evolving. The plan is to have this available, at least the general thrust of the program for this administration, already known to each of the various policymakers and implementers in government, and we develop this, flesh it out as we go along. But the plan is to come out with this Philippine Development Plan by October or November this year. So it will be the development of these plans is going to be much faster and quite different from previous practices of NEDA, because we would want this to be already available for all stakeholders before the end of the term or the end of this year. So I would we would appreciate any comments from our colleagues in the PAASE, in NAST, and I will be happy to work with you, and I would be happy also to listen to your 10-point agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary RC. I appreciate the very comprehensive presentation that you've made. Your plans are almost complete and very palpable. And to reiterate, you would reinvigorate job creation, accelerate post-recovery economic development that is inclusive or pro-poor, resilient to climate change, and adaptable to the spread of automation and artificial intelligence. So it's very clear that there may be some contributions from the PAASE that you would appreciate or make use of at this point. And then you talked about PPP and build. And you would like to build the infrastructure and the cyber structure. But I think we also need to build the superstructure or the S&T human capital workforce. So thank you very much, Secretary-Designates Fred and RC. And at this point, I know there's a lot that we would like to hear from our President, Mario, and our past and present PAASE leaders. But first, let me hand over the hosting to Vice President Gladys Completo for our appreciation and thanks to our Secretary-Designates. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Giselle. So I'd like to call on Mario to present the congratulatory certificates to our guests. You're muted.
At this point, thank you, VP Gladys. Thank you, former President Giselle. At this point, I'd like to present this congratulatory certificate to Secretary-Designate Alfredo Pascual for your appointment as the top, man for DTI for the coming administration. At this same time, I'd like to also present the certificate, for Dr. Arsenio Balisacan for your appointment as Secretary of the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA. Congratulations to you both. Secretary Pascual mentioned two challenges: food security and energy security. And at PAASE, we are very much ready to assist in the best way we can in pursuing, these concerns. Also, Dr. Balisacan emphasized, inclusivity, pro-poor, poverty reduction programs, and with also some focus on post-COVID recovery, climate change. In fact, we have one of the foremost experts in climate change with us here, PAASE, a former president and founder, Dr. Josefino Comiso from NASA. Now I am ready to talk about briefly about the overview of our 10-point recommendation. That's a product of the 1 week of pro-science activism in late February and early March. These RTDs were composed of representatives from the OST, DTI, NEDA, DA, the Philippine Association of State Universities and Colleges, Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities, so both public and private universities. We also have representatives from foundations like System, Unilab, Shell Foundation, Knowledge Channel, the UP Engineering Research and Development Foundation. Also, we have representatives from local and international NGOs such as ICSC and STRIDE. Now, these are the 10-point recommendations of from PAASE based on these RTDs. Number one is the reinforcement of of science and technology, human capital development, based on the paper that Dr. Concepcion and also Dr. Pascual was a co-author. With the increasing demand for science and technology resources and the high employability of prospects, we need to look into strategies to encourage our younger generation to pursue and persevere in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics careers, increase MS and PhD faculty in SUCs and other AGIs to increase research productivity and strengthen the innovation environment for increased industry collaboration and tech startup promotion. Number two is the establishment of R1 universities based on a major paper by Dr. Joel Coelho. So for Philippine universities to advance and develop toward becoming the country's own equivalent of full-fledged research one universities, just like here in the US, they need to take concrete steps to establish student-focused and faculty-focused practices and initiatives that increase research productivity, including, for example, research and entrepreneurship, internships, industry sponsorships for students and for faculty, incentivizing of research and entrepreneurship also, publications, patents, as well as development of university-industry partnership. Number three is the increase and leveraging of STI funding. So higher funding for STI will ensure that more researchers will be supported in terms of infrastructure, financial incentives, laboratory supplies, and programs for improvement of research, education, and training, exchange of scientists, and STEM scholars programs. Number four is the creation and enabling of multi-stakeholder partnerships for STI across sectors and communities. So quadrilateral cooperation among the government, universities, industries, and communities is important in order to push an integrative, on-the-ground implementation of S&T plans in each and across organizations on the national, regional, and local levels. Number five is the promotion of STI in the regions and support of regional institutions. So in addition to continuing support of leading universities and higher education institutions in the country, so regional universities should be identified and provided with necessary guidance and support for them to become niche-oriented centers of research and innovation with highly productive faculty and researchers who are competitive nationally and internationally. Number 6 is the advancement of internalization of S&T research and development. So we need to institutionalize and promote a more open system of exchange of local and foreign S&T experts to further transfer of knowledge and technology in the country. So opening up the education sector to facilitate partnerships between Philippine and foreign universities. So an expedited process of application, for example, for Balik scientists, and an attractive incentive package for foreign scholars and researchers need to be created to recruit and retain foreign researchers and consultants. Number 7 is the crafting and implementing evidence-based STI policies and programs. So evidence-based policies and programs must be designed to help in the development of S&T human capital in the country. This would include support of existing and creation of new programs or adoption or adaptation of models for research, education, and training, and mentoring, and tracking their short and long-term outcomes. Number 8 is the development of the national STI data infrastructure. Or number 8, so to be able to develop complete plans, set targets, and implement programs, we need to set up a robust nationwide data infrastructure to monitor inputs, processes, outputs, and outcomes with respect to S&T, R&D in the country. Number 9 is the removal of structural and institutional barriers to S&T research and development. Although there has been an increase in the R&D budget from the government, Philippine University and government researchers often face substantial barriers in the implementation of their research projects. So one of the main issues is the one-size-fits-all cumbersome procurement process that severely impedes timely purchase and delivery of research materials and equipment, which subsequently impacts a project's timeline. That's just one example. And finally, last but not the least, the enhancement of social impact of science, technology, and innovation. So the science and technology innovation ecosystem in the country has to be inclusive, enabling, and empowering. Its focus should be on the impact of the scientific enterprise on the Filipino people in every level of society to take part in building an innovative future, improving economic condition of households and communities, increasing health and well-being of individuals and families, and empowering marginalized sectors. So as you can see, these 10-point recommendations dovetail with what Sec-Designate Fred Pascual and Sec-Designate RC Balisacan earlier discussed. There will be many more, articulations of aspirations and recommendations from our colleagues at PAASE in the next few minutes. So for now, maraming pong salamat for giving us the opportunity to present this overview of the recommendations, and we will be sending a complete, paper, to let you know about the details of all these recommendations. Salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you for presenting the PAASE's 10-point agenda. And we heard from Secretary-Designate Pascual's top priorities on addressing challenges on food security, energy security, social security, and industry development. And also Secretary-Designate Balisacan also presented a comprehensive plan and emphasized the need to ensure food security, encourage R&D and innovation, specifically in food and agriculture. Now, I'd like to move on to the next part of our program, that is the discussion and the brief messages and statements and important concerns and suggestions from our distinguished PAASE members. But first of all, I would like to introduce the panelists. Let me just share slides. Okay. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, so I'd like to start by introducing Dr. Ernesto Pernia, the former Secretary of Socioeconomic Planning and Director General of the National Economic and Development Authority, and a Professor Emeritus of Economics at the University of the Philippines. And our second panelist is Dr. Gobet Advincula. He is the Governor's Chair for Advanced and Nanostructured Materials at the Department of Chemical and Biomolecular Engineering at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and he has a joint appointment at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Our third panelist is Dr. Joel Coelho. He is a professor of Agricultural and Biosystems Engineering and director of the Global Initiative for Strategic Agriculture in Drylands at the University of Arizona. He also serves as the vice chair of the International Association for Vertical Farming. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Alvin Culaba, who is a distinguished full professor and university fellow at De La Salle University, Manila, and director of the LSU Center for Engineering and Sustainable Development Research. Our fifth panelist is Dr. Felino Lansigan. He is a professor emeritus of statistics at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, and former dean of UPLB's College of Arts and Sciences. And last but not the least, Dr. Al Serafica. He is the executive director of the Center for Integrated STEM Education and a corresponding member of the National Academy of Science and Technology. Without further ado, let us start this forum, and I would like to call on Dr. Ernie Pernia. You are Dr. Ernie Pernia?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. President of PAASE, Dr. Mario Santo Domingo, and Vice President Gladys Completo, Dr. Gladys Completo. And of course, our designate secretaries, Secretary-Designate Fred Pascual and Arsenio Balisacan, and my colleagues on the panel that's going to be dealing with specific issues and concerns regarding the new administration and how things will be turning out. And of course, the most heartwarming news, I think, was the announcement of the economic team for the incoming administration with Dr. Balisacan, Dr. Fred Pascual, Ben Jokno, and Pangandaman. Very, very, very cohesive. The important thing is that it's a very cohesive economic team. And also, I think the cooperation among the four will be quite smooth and with minimal disagreements. So that's a very important thing for the economic team. Okay, let me just point out certain things, certain policies that need to be pushed, and I think many of these have already been mentioned or covered by Fred Pascual and Arsenio Balisacan. So yeah, one thing that I think we need to push harder is the ease of doing business and the delivery of government service, speedy delivery of government service. This policy has already been approved, and it has been adopted by the current government. But in terms of outcomes, the it's not very heartening that the outcomes regarding ease of doing business, meaning cutting of red tape, and for government agencies to be delivering services faster. For example, the idea was for the delivery of government service, or for example, permits. It has to be done in 3 days for very urgent permits, and then 7 days for more complicated permits, and maybe 21 days at the most for the most complicated permits. So, but this is not happening, and I just want to say that what is important is that the policies that are going to be implemented by the new administration ought to be more speedy in terms of implementation and the delivery of results and impacts on what the policy is intended to do. So we have this, as I've said, ease of doing business. To me, it has been disappointing in terms of the red tape that seems to be continuing in the government. And then the rice tarification law, I think that has been a very good policy, but there is a problem because there has been some, I gather that there's been some rent seeking under this regime of rice tarification, of the rice tarification law. The other thing that is in danger of being dropped or jettisoned is the oil price stabilization forum, or and now because of the steep prices of oil, there is a strong lobby about getting back, reverting the government reverting to the oil price stabilization, OPSF, and that is going to be ill-advised. So I hope this kind of thing, the new administration, our friends in the cabinet will not easily soften on the demands of a lot of people regarding the OPSF. And then just on the first quarter of this year, the Public Service Act, the Retail Trade Liberalization Act, and the Foreign Investment Act were signed by the President. But of course, they haven't been implemented yet. And I think the IRRs of these new laws, new acts, have still to be completed. And I think it's the new administration is going to be lucky that we already have this that triumvirate of policies that are going to be very critical in terms of moving the economy faster. Most of this all these three new policies, PSA, RTLA, and FIA, they will be helping the country receive foreign direct investments in different areas. So I hope when the new government assumes this new critical, very important new policies will be rolling on, will be implemented, so that in the near term we can already see the fruition, the benefits of these new policies. And then S&T, of course, needs to be further boosted, especially in terms of financing. You know, the funding for S&T has been on the order of 0.15. Maybe now it's about 0.19% of GDP. The funding for S&T and R&D. We need to increase this funding for S&T and R&D to the closer to what our ASEAN neighbors are doing. Indonesia is something like 0.40% of GDP. Thailand is closer to 1% of GDP, and Malaysia and Singapore are even over 1% of GDP. And that is the norm that has been suggested by the UNESCO. But Philippines has been lagging behind in terms of funding S&T and R&D. And then agriculture. Agriculture has been cellar dweller in terms of our sectors. And this really needs to be revitalized. We need to revitalize agriculture. But the agriculture secretary hasn't been, the president, I think, is going to assume the secretaryship of agriculture. But I hope he will be getting undersecretaries to help him who will really, push harder in terms of revitalizing, enlivening agriculture. It has been a neglected sector, and that is why we are importing so much of our food items. And then manufacturing. Manufacturing has been stagnant at 20% of GDP in terms of what it has been doing. So agriculture is something like less than 10%, way below 10%. It's something like 1% or 2% only. Sometimes it's negative. Industry is 30%, of which 20% is manufacturing. But manufacturing has been stagnant at 20% of GDP. The biggest sector, of course, is service sector, which is about 60% of GDP. But that is the least, in terms of the least effective in terms of generating jobs, and in terms of boosting our export industry. So that is something that Fred Pascual can collaborate with the Secretary of Agriculture in terms of boosting agriculture on the one hand and then industry on the other hand, because many of the items in agriculture are also processed to some industrial products. Then PPPs. This has been mentioned by RC Balisacan, and this is something that was not this government. The economic team was not really excited. Was not really strong. Was not keen on PPPs. In fact, we only have about 6 or 7 PPPs, and compared with during the Pinoy administration, something like 17 PPPs, and for some reason, the Department of Finance was not supportive of PPPs. In fact, it has been restrictive, and any PPP that has been approved, it would take too long. So I hope in this new administration, the economic team will push harder and faster PPPs, especially because they will compensate for our fiscal constraint. And PPP should, usually apply to physical infrastructure, but they should also apply to social infrastructure, hospitals, school facilities, academic facilities should also be promoted by PPPs, as well as other undertakings in health, education systems capacity. And there can also be public-private partnership in getting policies like the Public Service Act, Retail Trade Liberalization Act, and Foreign Investment Act. There can be some cooperation there between public and private sector. The public and private sector should be strange bedfellows, meaning that they're cooperative, but they have to be distant in terms of So in other words, there shouldn't be too much intimacy between the public and the private sector, but at the same time they should be cooperative. They should be amicable to each other. In the current government, that has not been the case. In fact, as you know, Manila Water and Maynilad was heavily attacked by this administration, by the president himself. So which is not good, because this has really dampened the spirits, the enthusiasm of the private sector. And then in the internationalization of Philippine universities, a la Singapore, Thailand, and China. If China, a communist country, can internationalize its universities with Western universities, why can't the Philippines do it? And Thailand is also Singapore. That's really going to boost the quality of our graduates, tertiary graduates, and even postgraduate education. And then something on institutional arrangements. I think there's a need for a leads secretary for each of the different policies or cluster of policies. There should be a lead secretary, so that there's somebody who can crack the whip on getting things done and getting them done faster. So that's what that would be. So there should be synergistic coordination and timeline for getting policies implemented and their intended impacts and results delivered. And just from my experience in the cabinet meeting, our cabinet meetings were just too long. The cabinet meeting would be scheduled for 4 o'clock or 4:30, 5 o'clock, but we would get started at 7 o'clock. But then the cabinet meeting would end around 1 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning. But not much usually tends to be accomplished, because there's so much deviation, digression in the conversation. So the management of the cabinet meetings is very important, and it can be done in three hours if it is a better managed cabinet meeting, and maybe more productive. So I just want to mention those things, because I was recently in the cabinet, 2016 to 2020. And, a lot of excitement, but a lot of discouragement also. And so I'm sure Fred Pascual and RC Balisacan are prepared to take up the challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ernie Pernia. Let us now move on to Dr. Gobet Advincula.
Thank you, Gladys. And thank you, Mario, for organizing this honoring event to Secretary-Designate Pascual and Secretary-Designate Balisacan. Again, my congratulations. And it's fitting that Dr. Pernia was the first to give his thoughts, and congratulations to the incoming secretary. As we know, our colleagues at PAASE, we have benefited from Ernest's wisdom and interaction with the government and PAASE. And so we would like to continue this tradition. I know in this short time and space, we don't have much to really convey our thoughts. So I just want to assure Secretary Pascual and Secretary Balisacan that we're available at PAASE. We will have hopefully many opportunities to engage with you, with DTI, with NEDA, with DOST. I myself, as some of you know very well, have been very much engaged with the Philippines, even though I'm based here in the US. Most recently with DOST, the establishment of the Additive Manufacturing Center. In fact, the biggest accomplishment, if I look back, are the number of Filipino PhDs I've trained, close to 25, and now I'm looking at 10 more through a program that I initiated with DOST and several new PhD students that I accepted in my group. So really, education, training is very close in my heart. I know we are looking at short-term, long-term solutions. I would like to really just focus on solutions because we all know the problems and challenges. I would say focusing on 2 or 3 points. One is energy. Energy really is a challenge of our day, if not has been a century. It's only going to get worse. So we really have to prepare for that. And the cost of importing, even technical smuggling, has hurt the Philippines. Inflation, as we all know, is a form of taxation. And the balance of payments with regards to the rise of the US dollar is only going to get worse unless we find energy security fast and furious. I have engaged with Shell, actually, EDC in some other projects and some of the chemical manufacturing. What we really need to do is spur fast investments in energy creation. I would say renewable is good, but it's not enough. What the Philippines should focus on is geothermal. We have so much geothermal resource. We just need to have a very efficient capital expenditure and even profitability in a lot of our corporations when it comes to geothermal and hydrothermal. Coal is going to be important, and all of these are all solutions. We cannot just focus on green, but we have to quickly and fast produce our energy resiliency. Surprisingly, when we mentioned Singapore, Professor Pernia mentioned Singapore, we have many things we can say about Singapore, but you may not know that Singapore actually is the biggest petroleum producer in the region. They have focused on refining decades ago. And right now, if you buy gasoline anywhere in Southeast Asia, most likely it came from Singapore. We missed the boat in many ways. In fact, Shell and Petron have win and wane in terms of their investment. But gasoline, diesel is directly related to our capacity to refine. And unfortunately, because of the geopolitical problems, we cannot exploit the West Philippine Sea. In fact, Malampaya, for all the controversy it has, it's contributed to 10% of our electricity needs. And it might surprise you, geothermal and EDC has converted also 10%. So if you balance the 80%, where is it coming from? So you can immediately see the impact if we had decades ago exploited the West Philippine Sea to our advantage and allowed a lot of exploration before this geopolitical problem. We may have been sitting, and our is probably sitting on a very, very big gas field in that area, which could have been a good way to lessen our importation. In fact, natural gas is not only gasoline, it's not only electricity, it's also a source of plastic. Here in the US, when they build a new polymer polymer and production plant, meaning monomers and then eventually polyolefins like polyethylene, polypropylene. Guess where they situated it? They situated it actually in Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania has one of the richest gas fields. And plastics, you may hear many things about it, but still is the foundation of many, many industrializations and economy. And then I'll focus on the second thing, which is the advanced manufacturing, additive manufacturing, and tie it up to jobs creation, high value adding. Again, if we look at Singapore, where did they focus? So they only also not only focus on many semiconductor, high-tech goods, petroleum, but really they made sure that they are the hub of locators. They are the hub of advanced manufacturing, high value added manufacturing. Although we are going to focus a lot on creating jobs faster, maybe through agriculture, let us focus on high value manufacturing. And high value manufacturing doesn't mean that we have to use the old technologies of 20 years ago or even invent new ones. We have to import, if not capitalize, the best manufacturing tools, even robotics in our country, because many of these new technologies will spur the foundation and training within our universities to upskill our students. And that's why 5 years ago, when I approached DOST and working with Undersecretary Guevara then, I told her that we should get into advanced manufacturing very fast. To date, actually, we are only second to Singapore. Singapore actually uses additive manufacturing to repair and produce many prototypes for companies like General Electric and Boeing using 3D printing. And we have the best machines, actually, in our land right now through the investment almost totaling about $15 million in a new center at DOST. We should capitalize on this additive manufacturing. Recently, I've been talking with NISMED, and this is with Cheryl Monterola. And we've even been talking about creating a curriculum for high school students on additive manufacturing. And that's really the long-term vision I have with regards to additive manufacturing as a method, a tool, if not a focus on science and engineering that will upskill our universities. So with a short-term and long-term solution, I believe this administration can do much. And again, I'm expressing the sentiments of my PAASE colleagues that we are here. We are available, we are willing to help. We have built on skills that we can contribute to the motherland. And whether this administration, previous administration, or future administration, lahat tayo nagkakaisa. Mga Pilipino, wherever we are going to help each other. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Gobet, for that. And thank you for emphasizing the focus on energy and on our geothermal plants. So let me now move on to Dr. Joel Coelho. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gladys, and thank you, everyone. And I just want to join everyone in sending my greetings as well as my many congratulations to Secretary Pascual and Secretary Balisacan, I'm sorry. And I'm calling you secretaries because I have full faith that you will be confirmed as such. And as Secretary Pernia told us, you will be two of the excellent teams of the economic team of the incoming administration, and that includes Secretary Jokno, who will be the new Finance Secretary, and Secretary Pangandaman, who will be the new Budget Secretary. So we have full faith and confidence in your abilities in terms of steering the Philippine economy. So I just would like to begin by noting that as you begin your term, or your responsibilities, we're actually in an altered scenario here for the global economy because we're coming out of the pandemic. And now there's the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which has really disrupted the supply chain or further disrupted it, as well as the global economy. And then, of course, there's the rising inflation, which is not only taking place in the Philippines, but everywhere on earth. So that's a trifecta of challenges that you're going to have to face. And so this has really caused a lot of upheavals and disruption in the global economy. But the way that I'm looking at it is that it's really a way of resetting. It's a great reset of the global economy in terms of all of the participating economies in the globalized world. So this creates a lot of challenges and headaches for every national economy, but at the same time, it produces significant opportunities for every country on earth that is a part of this globalized economy. And so I look at this as a great opportunity as well for the Philippines to sort of recalibrate and reset its national economy. And I really appreciated, all of the things that I've heard today from Secretary Pascual, for instance, a refocus on food security, a refocus on energy security, a refocus on integrated health systems, which are all essential for the Philippines. And with Secretary Balisacan, in terms of the medium-term goal is to be able to revive and recapture the vibrancy of the manufacturing sector in the Philippines. And Secretary Pernia also mentioned that unfortunately it's become sort of stagnant at around 20% of the GDP. And I think there's a great opportunity to refresh that and to revive that and to boost it so that it can get a greater share of the GDP. Just because the jobs that are created in the manufacturing sector, as you all know, is much more high paying than, let's say, in the service sector of the economy. So I'm particularly pleased that we have a very strong economic sector in the Philippines, or economic team in the Philippines, because really we cannot have a vibrant S&T sector in the Philippines without a strong economic team, because these two are directly connected. So let me just share with you one slide. I promise just one slide, which is really which talks about the crux of my recommendation to you today. And I'm focused on closing the loop of the Philippine S&T innovation ecosystem. Right now, we've got all of these elements of the innovation ecosystem. Of course, the Department of Agriculture has its own R&D centers. The Department of Science and Technology has its own R&D centers. We now have research universities in the Philippines. Perhaps not many of them are R1 or Research 1 universities yet, but we have research universities. We have science and technology startups that are starting to crop up in the Philippines. And of course, we have the global manufacturing sector, which overall really in the past decade or so has been quite successful. It's created thousands of jobs in the Philippines and has really created a lot of revenue for the country. It has attracted foreign direct investment and has boosted the export portion of the Philippine economy. But this is what is missing in this loop so that we can close this loop, and that is the global industrial R&D sector. So there's the globally linked manufacturing sector, but it needs to be paired with the globally linked industrial R&D sector. Because this is not well established in the Philippines, the science and technology graduates of the research universities of the Philippines, they don't have a lot of jobs that are available for them in the Philippines, except the jobs that are being offered by the research universities themselves, the R&D centers of the DOST, the research centers of the DA, and perhaps other government agencies in the Philippines, because there's really not a lot of local companies in the Philippines that can absorb all of these highly qualified researchers that are being produced in the Philippines at present. And so there's a need to really build this globally linked industrial R&D sectors. And they can be directly paired really with the global manufacturing sector, because there are now many global companies in the Philippines that are doing global manufacturing. So one possibility is really to encourage them and even to incentivize them in various ways so that they could bring in some of their industrial R&D functions into the country. And then they could partner with research universities. They could hire the graduates of the research universities. They can even cooperate with these research centers by the DOST and the VA and other governments. And then the S&T startups in the Philippines through the DTI, BOI, could also be paired up with these industrial R&D sectors or the manufacturing sectors. And typically what happens is they get acquired, which is fine, because that would be good for the founders of those startups. So we really need to close the loop and have this closed loop Philippine innovation ecosystem for the country's S&T and for the country's global linked economy to really prosper and expand and thrive. One last point I want to make is in regard to, the various sectors, of course. Now, of course, there are already the current administrations, DTI and DOI, have established the current priority sectors of the economy for the global manufacturing. And of course, I'm sure that will be under review, given all of these disruptions that have happened caused by COVID and inflation and the war in the Ukraine and Russia. And so this new economic team then can figure out what are those priority sectors. And of course, one thing that I heard, of course, is food security, and then there's the energy security and the integrated health systems. And I completely agree with Secretary Pascual when he mentioned indoor agriculture. You have plant-based meat, you have cell-based meat. These are high technology parts of agriculture, and we can attract really global players, global companies to set up shop, perhaps in an economic zone in the Philippines to do their work. And then that would open up export in that particular sector as well for the country. And as mentioned in the introduction, I'm vice chair of the International Association for Vertical Farming. I'm well connected with the major players in the world on indoor agriculture and even in the cell-based meat as well as the plant-based meat sectors. And so I'm happy to help in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you very much for that graphic and for emphasizing our missing link, which is the global industrial R&D sector. Now, I'd like to move on to our next panelist, Dr. Alvin Culaba.
Thank you very much, Gladys, and of course, Mario and the PAASE leadership for this important event for this morning. Of course, in the science community, we are very much elated with the news that we are having our colleagues, the Secretaries-Designate, Fred Pascual and RC Balisacan, at the core of the economic team of the country. I would like to contribute to the discussion specifically on the fifth item or point that we wanted to recommend, to our current, to our incoming administration, which is on the promotion of STI and in the regions or at the provinces. I have been involved in the last 2 years in implementing or helping the Department of Science Technology to implement the innovation, science, and technology to accelerate regional technology-based, development. So we realized that, the key to accelerate economic development in the countryside is, the use of science, technology, and innovation, which after Joel Gobet here, strengthened also by the presentations of our two Secretary-Designates, that it is important that we use science and technology innovation to accelerate, the development in the countryside. While, the DOST focused on the regional development, our experience and my experience, it is much more difficult on the regional, level, rather than at the provincial level, primarily because of the political, jurisdiction of the our regional structure or provincial structure. Like for example, in a province, you can have highly urbanized cities that are not under the jurisdiction of the province, and therefore, to fully implement the economic program of the province would need the strong, support and cooperation of these highly urbanized, institutions or cities. So it is much easier at the provincial level when they are actually driven by the provincial local government. Primarily also because there are so much resources that are available, at our, provincial local governments at their disposal. And I would like to actually, on behalf of PAASE, to consider three important, considerations in helping accelerate economic development at the regional or provincial level. Number one, we know very well in an inclusive, driven economy, it has to be market driven. And therefore, DTI has a very important role in this, primarily because the economic priorities will have to be, driven by the market. By, if it is the agriculture, the farmers have to be involved, and as Joel has mentioned in his very, important, and clear framework, it has to have a global connection or global, market. And therefore, DTI has to work closely with the DOST and NEDA, primarily because we work on the provincial development plans, rather than the regional development, plans. Our experience is, there are not very close, cooperation, partnerships, or collaboration among the important agencies that drive, innovation in the countryside. So we need to have more stronger, partnerships and collaborations amongst, the DTI, primarily because it has to be market driven, the DOST to push or deploy the technology that's available, not only in the Philippines, but of course we also draw, the other technologies from, abroad. For example, the ones that actually mentioned by Gobet, earlier. Second is to, institutionalize the STI-based framework to accelerate, provincial or regional development. In our effort, for example, in the region or in the province, we have to include the framework, at the provincial development plan and hopefully at the regional development plan, which goes down to, to the municipal, level and even to the barangay level. So they are aware that, science, technology, innovation is there, to help, accelerate. In other words, to capitalize science technology that would help accelerate, their development in the specific, sectors, of the economy. The third one is really about, which we have always been pushing ever since, the S&T human capacity at the provincial level or at the regional level. That is why we want the provinces come up with a science and technology, human capital development plan, so that we can actually generate or develop the critical mass of scientists in priority areas of the economy. It's not enough just to have PhDs, if you were, just like Gobet was mentioning earlier, you have to have the critical mass of additive manufacturing, scientists or technologies. You need 15 plus another 20 or more of them. So we cannot have, and it has to be in each, region or in each province. At the moment, we rely so much on the, the expertise of our Balik scientists, our, scientists in the national capital region, which during this pandemic has been, affected in their mobility because of the restrictions. So we really need to capacitate, at the provincial or at the regional level. And I hope that, these three important components for economic development, inclusive economic development, can be strengthened, at the provincial or at the regional level. Thank you. And again, congratulations to our Secretaries-Designate, Fred and Arsenio. Thank you. And good morning and good evening in the US. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alvin. Thank you for that. So you emphasize three important issues, that is an inclusive driven economy and to institutionalize SMT-based framework in the regional level. And of course, the Human Capital Development Plan, extending it to the regional level. So now let us move on to Dr. Felino Lansican.
Okay, thank you very much, Gladys, and good day to all participants, especially to our two honorees, Secretary Pascual and Secretary Balisacan. Allow me first to extend my greetings and also congratulations to both of you. And also would like to thank you for accepting this challenging task of providing the needed leadership in two of the most important institutions in the country. Your presence in these institutions provide us strong hopes and confidence that our country will be able to overcome the challenges leading to our economic recovery. As we all know, the newly mandated budgetary resource allocation, or the so-called Mandanas-Garcia ruling, has recognized that the focus of development is at the local level. Thus, we hope that the DTI, under the leadership of Secretary Pascual, can further propel and enhance the needed private-public partnership in promoting growth and development, especially at the local level and also regional level. We hope that this partnership will generate more productive activities and livelihood opportunities. The local government units should be enticed to make investments on creating more jobs in their specific localities. Likewise, with Secretary Balisacan at the helm of NEDA, we are hopeful that the local government units can be motivated to prepare and update the respective LGU development plans to be more science-based or evidence-based for effective and efficient governance. That is, we need more science in these development plans and LGU actions, not just for compliance of the requirements of the local government units. We expect that there will be more trade-offs and competitions as we intensify the use of limited resources towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Moreover, development plans at the local and national level should be complementary and mutually reinforcing to lead us to economic recovery and growth. Good examples of this would be conflicts as far as land use plans, conflict at the national level and also local level on the flood control and drainage management plan, and also disaster risk reduction management plan. We are hopeful that the resilience of the different sectors as mentioned earlier, such as agriculture and food systems, energy sector, nutrition and health, among others, would be given emphasis against unexpected shocks and constraints. More science-based solutions are needed to effectively address these challenges. Lastly, we wish to greet our honorees, more power and also good health, Secretary Balisacan and Secretary Pascual. All the best. Keep well and safe always. God bless. Salamat po.
Thank you, Dr. Ino, for that. And thank you for emphasizing the need to focus on science in the development plan and to add to the focus on food security, energy security, and industrial development. We should also focus on the malnutrition problem of our country, that is on nutrition and health. I hope there will be also a focus on these aspects. Now, I would like to call on our last panelist. Is it the last one? Yes. So Dr. Al Serafica.
Thank you, Gladys. And again, first I'd like to congratulate PAEF, President Pascual, to me for having worked in UP together with him and his and VP Giselle in 2013 to 2016, the Tech Transfer and Business Development Office. Congratulations, PAEF, and also congratulations, PCC Chair RC Balisacan, who's a member of the National Academy. I'm very enthused, as so is most of the people I talk in the private sector, about your appointments in the economic team of the incoming administration. So I know there's a lot of challenges up ahead and really dark clouds coming over post-pandemic. But rest assured, we're here. As GOBET extended our support to you, being familiar with the innovation ecosystem that Joel has described, that we've been trying to build for the last 9 years as well. And again, I wish to thank Giselle for trying to get this organized very quickly, and for both of you for accepting the invitation to outline your priorities as it is. I know it's going to change dramatically as you have your first cabinet meetings, as Secretary Pernia had mentioned. Those long overnight activities will definitely expand your work dramatically as you see it today. But just to make it on a personal level, I've been back here in the Philippines for 9 years, and I've been involved in the ecosystem of science and technology. And there's really one underlying theme of my coming back here after being in the US for 24 years. That is to create an ecosystem for us scientists and engineers and inventors to be able to contribute to nation building. And given the priority list that you provided, I would like to suggest a more personal path forward, which has already been acted upon by everybody in the ecosystem, by both academia, PAASE, NAST, as well as the SUCs. And of course, very active in it is the UST and DTI previously. And I've been part of the US AIDS Stride project for the last 9 years, also promoting ecosystem in both academia and government. And